right, hey everybody. I hope everybody's doing good. I am here this week with a piano player and a musician here in Kansas City, TJ Erhardt. How you doing, man?
I'm well, man. Thanks for having me over.
No problem, man. So
I
I
need
met
a bigger
you.
fern.
Yeah. I met you at the foundation, I believe. I think it was a couple of years when I first got into town, I think, and I think we jammed downstairs in the little area, and then I've seen you been playing around a lot, and for the people that don't know you very well, tell them a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done.
Sure. Well, I like to do my thumbnail sketch bio by saying I've been a musician since I was 6. Started singing in boys' choirs growing up in Bozeman, Montana. Had great advantage of a marvelous teacher as a kid that inspired me to stay with that particular form. Went through junior high and high school in California, also with some tremendous teachers. It encouraged me to continue with that path. Got a vocal scholarship to go to Concordia College, Moorhead, Minnesota. Graduated high school early, went to college at 17, spent a year in college. Well, actually about 8 months. I started playing in a rock and roll band, and this is the middle 80s. This is 86.
Yeah.
So it was mullets and spandex, and I had to strap on KX5 and the whole nine. And it was great, and I made enough playing on weekends with a cover band, start paying my tuition. And being it as Minnesota was the last state in the country to change their drinking laws to 21. So I'm just turned 18.
Wow.
Drinking with Norwegian bachelor farmers and playing in a rock and roll band, all legally.
Yeah, wow.
I figured, well, here we go.
Yeah.
Basically is 30 years ago and been doing it ever since.
Yeah, wow, man, that's cool. I didn't know that was the last state to go.
In order to qualify for highway funding is how the federal government dangled the carrot on, well, if you make everybody 21, we'll give you your interstate funding.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. So, and I didn't know that you were originally like a pretty big singer, it sounds like. Yeah, you sang quite a bit as a kid, huh?
Choral programs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think I may be the only person I know to have sung every single part in Handel's Messiah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow.
From boy soprano all the way
Wow,
to
that's
bass.
funny. Yeah.
I've learned every staff line in that whole thing.
Yeah, that's funny.
So when I go to sing-alongs, I can never decide. Well, I can't actually sing that, but I'm reading it. I remember that part.
Well, that's one of those songs that nobody knows their part. They just know the song. So you'll hear it when you go to churches, you'll hear, and he shall reign, and then the next guys will, and he shall, everybody
and
just picks the part. Yeah.
And he shall reign.
Everybody sings like everybody else's part, because I just think that's always funny.
That's the joy of Baroque period music is that they're all melodies. But the genius of those composers, the bigger the wig, the better the voice leading. Handel could find a way to create brilliant ideas harmonically with all these different melodies. And so, everybody thinks that their part's the melody.
You're right, yeah. Well, it is. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I know at our church they always they always let whoever wants to come up, because a lot of us that'll come back on like Easter, there's quite a bit of musicians at their church, and so that's always fun to go back and sing that. So, and definitely I've seen you, like even the other night, we went out and you're playing with Dusty, right? Dusty Russ at their open jam at West.
And the Roman Oklahomans.
Yeah. And that was fun, man. And so the most of the time when I've seen you've been playing piano, obviously. I know that over the years you've done a lot of different kinds of music, a lot of different kinds of genres, and that's really similar to me, I guess, because I really enjoy like diving out into stuff. And
Duke. Yeah, it's Duke Ellington's famous line. There's only 2 kinds of music, good and bad. I like playing all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be played.
Oh, yeah.
I never get discouraged about how people will say, music sucks, can't find anything good. It's out there, man. It was always hard to find.
Yeah.
There's always been Perry Como records that you had to avoid that got played a lot. Like, there's plenty of other stuff under there, and if you go find it, you'll run out of time listening to good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You won't even have time to listen to something that, granted, I got to put an ear on a Taylor Swift record from time to time just to hear what it sounds like. Well, I admire the engineering.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the modern Nashville pop I don't call it country.
Right.
The engineering is spectacular.
Yeah.
It is scrubbed within a 1 and a 0 the whole way, and that's impressive to me as a technical feat.
Oh yeah, and
whether or not there's any actual music in it, it's for the listener to decide.
Those pop tunes, I mean, they've had 60 years of pop rock stuff to get it right? They've had about 60, 70,
as
whatever.
As opposed to listening to a Chuck Berry record when they're still figuring out what rock and roll's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You don't know, the drummer doesn't know if that's a dotted pattern or if it's straight.
Yeah.
Or, the big band swing is as close to the thing that they're trying to do, but trying to make it motor along a little more. And it's just hearing what we hear now and hearing what they did then, thinking, why does it sound that way? Because they didn't know what they were doing. They had no
didn't
context.
know what they were doing,
Making it up on the spot.
Yeah, and that's probably similar to every single genre that comes out. I mean, I'm sure the late 70s rap, they didn't know what they were doing either. Because that just happened, Sugar Hill Gang and all those people,
Flash.
Yeah, any of those new genres that come in, I'm sure 1906, they don't know what's going on with jazz, right? I mean, it just had started, and it was
when jazz was still a verb, not a noun.
Yeah, exactly.
When you took pop tunes of the day and played them in a certain way,
rather
than
jazzy,
songs written for that sound.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I mean, and and you mentioned something else really interesting that I feel as well is that I like different songs in every single genre because I think there's validity in every single genre when you get a great musician. Like you said, there's good and bad. I mean, there's good in every single genre. You got to go find it though.
Yeah. For hip hop, I was always a big fan of Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy, which was Michael Frante's band before he, it's not Burning Spear. What the heck's the name of his new band? I say new. He's been doing that for 20 years.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I mean, there's some really interesting textural things going on in hip hop. But again, the engineering is amazing.
Right.
And there's more melody being written in it. And when the lines between R&B and hip hop are blurring, and the lines between rock and hip hop are starting to blur now. I listened to something the other day from a guy who performs under the name Nowhere Nothing. I think, and it's emo and hip hop.
Yeah.
And I had to give it a listening. Well, all right, what's the deal? And it's exactly as it sounds.
Yeah,
it's emo and hip hop.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And if you had no context, like modern art in general, if you have no context to a Mark Rothko, you go, what? 2 colors. Okay, what is this? So what? Anybody could do that. If you put it in context of where figurative drawing at the beginning of the 20th century, artists were looking for another way to express things in 2 dimensions. So beginning to take the figure out of it, that's where Impressionism came from, Cubism, all these different movements, they're just trying to find other ways to say something other than an apple on a table with nice lighting. But if you don't have that context, then you have no idea why those things are important.
Oh yeah, and you don't appreciate it. And
If you have a bit of a context to it, you could say, man, what a leap that he was willing to try that. But any kind of artistic education, which is hard enough to come by if you're actually in school for it, much less without it. You have to have the curiosity.
Yeah.
As prevalent as Google is now, just to sit down and run through a rabbit hole of, why is Damien Hirst selling things for $1 million when it's a shark cut in half? Because, the Dadaist movement influenced, Marcel Duchamp putting a toilet on a gallery floor and calling it art. And that was the early 20s in Paris. And people were scratching their heads at the time and trying to define the idea of art. And you can't do that unless you know what it was defined as before. Same thing with music. And you just don't have any context, then it sounds like noise. Those crazy kids, turn that down.
Yeah, man. And so I know that one thing that's kind of funny to me about playing, or the thing that's interesting to me is when we all have our technique and we kind of have our material and stuff that we improv with or whatever. And then when we go to these different genres, I find that it's really easy to just kind of go play my stuff with this new thing that I'm in, if it's country or jazz or whatever. But I find the challenge in kind of altering myself to the music to make it feel a little more authentic. Like I find that a good challenge to do that, even though I'm a classical player, so I play stuff.
Right.
I have a classical, mentality when I come into it, and I can't help that, But
the thought occurs to me even as you say that the idea of feeling authentic is an oxymoron.
Yeah, explain that.
Authenticity can't be felt. It either is or it isn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, so
now,
yeah.
That having been said, if that shouldn't put everybody in one tiny little box where this is the thing that you do. Authenticity it should be more hard and fast. Like that is the thing that you do. If it's in a different context, then that creates a new thing.
Yeah,
you don't have to try and form what you're doing around other things in order to make it feel more like what you think it should.
That's a good point.
If that made any sense at all.
That did make a lot of sense, because that's what I feel like. I feel like I am faking bluegrass. That's what I feel like, because I listen to somebody else who's a real true like bluegrass style fiddler. I don't play like him. Right. I don't play at all like him. And
there's one guy on the planet right now who's a bluegrass piano player. It's Bruce Hornsby.
Yeah.
He's the only guy I ever heard that could play with a bluegrass band. And you go, well, that's what bluegrass piano is supposed to sound like, even though there is no such thing as bluegrass piano.
Right.
If you wanted to be authentic, but nope.
Yeah, and we can make all sorts of analogies with many bands. I mean, the heavy metal version that I think of is like Metallica. I mean, like they're the gold standard of 70s, 80s, 90s heavy metal, or whatever analogy you could think of a person that's what this genre is supposed to sound like. I find it funny when, like, for instance, this happens a lot in this town, I think, where we have a very bluesy town here. A lot of the players are very, very bluesy compared to other towns.
And when you talk about Kansas City and the blues community and then trying to get gigs, if you're coming up playing, you start out at a couple of jams, and invariably some of those folks at those jams find another barbecue joint where everybody can get $50 a night, and you can turn that into 5 nights a week.
Sure.
Even now in the 21st century, in Kansas City, you can get a gig.
Oh, sure.
Don't pay much, hours and long. People complain, but the work is available. It's not that there's nowhere to play.
Yeah.
When I was coming up in Kansas City, you would get 6 night-a-week gigs.
Sure.
And you'd have 6 or 7 of them that you would just rotate through. So you're at the same place about every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But you do 6 nights at one joint, 6 nights at another joint, 6 nights,
Wow.
And that was how you made a decent living.
Oh, sure.
And you only had to tear down and set up twice a week.
Yeah. Wow. That's funny.
I know the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. And the 40s too. I mean, you heard like Ellington had the Cotton Club, and he had it. He played every night and or however many nights a week.
Well, you can pull a lot of those stories from going to the foundation and just looking at the band, the Benny Moten Orchestra. Right. They played down the street. That was their gig.
Yeah.
And all the cats would come out. You'd play in 2 or 3 different orchestras and have an afternoon show, a night show, a late show, and then everybody show up at the foundation and work out all the stuff for the next weeks of shows. If somebody got a new chart or somebody heard a new tune, that was what the foundation was for, to sit around, have a drink, flirt with the waitresses while they're not working from the clubs that everybody was in, and work some stuff out.
Yeah. And then you go sleep for 2 hours, and then you go do it again, right?
Yeah. Get up about noon, brush off your other tuxedo, and
That's
and go
funny,
to work.
Man. So with this idea of like playing different styles, like there's a lot of blues guys in town, and when they go, let me say this again, when they go try to play country, they sound like a blues guy playing country.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of where my head is at when I go play different genres, because in jazz it is really cool but it works really awesome when you like play classical in jazz. It sounds so different from everybody else, and it's so accepted.
Right.
But like some of the other genres, when you try to do something else with it, you definitely have now turned to this not into rock. Like you said, you're not really doing rock anymore. You're doing something else. Which is still cool.
But is that what the folks that showed up want to hear?
Yes.
No, man, I don't want to.
Yeah, and
if I want to hear that, I'd go hear the
So that was one example that I could think off the top of my head.
An excellent record. If you don't have it, it's Man from Muskogee. It's Claude Fiddler Williams and Jay McShann.
Wow.
And that blend, and that Kansas City is so famous for that blend of blues and jazz.
Yeah.
And a bit of homespun country flavored, kind of.
Yeah.
Because it's just piano and fiddle.
Is that the whole album?
Yeah,
just
the two. Jay singing and Claude and him playing.
Oh, wow.
And you can hear the influences, but they're so well, not disguised is the word, but so well integrated into the songs that they're playing. Like, oh, I get how that can work there. Or, how cool was that, kind of gypsy jazz riff versus just a double stop over a quick change. That's a great record if you don't have it.
Yeah, I've only seen YouTubes of Claude. I just came.
I got
right
to hear him at
after
the Plaza 3 with Jay.
Yeah,
and
wow.
Sonny Kenner, who was a long-standing blues guitar player in Kansas City, years and years and years, always had would do Monday nights at the Levee. I've never seen a man smoke a joint in my life faster than Sonny Kenner could. 2 puffs and one as thick as your finger. He'd take a break and he'd light that up and it'd be.
Yeah, wow. Holy crap.
So, y'all ready to do it B flat?
Yeah.
Roach.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I guess Sonny's ready to do another set.
Jeez.
But he would do the Grand Emporium regularly too, and he was Jay's band leader in town. And you would never have thought, watching Sonny do his set, that Jay McShann would have Sonny Kenner playing guitar and fronting his band. But I saw him more than once down at the Plaza 3 when Jay would decide to play. Sonny was his man, and Sonny could adapt what you always thought he played blues licks. He would just open them up a little bit. If anything, he could play less at that gig because Jay put the color in it. Sonny didn't have to stand on making sure that you knew there were flatted thirds and flatted sevenths and that kind of constant bending in blues that to make it sound like a singer.
Yeah.
He could play a little less, but still color it just right, and I know that's why Jay dug him. And I think that Sonny had better dope than anybody, which never hurts.
So like, when what I'm trying to get at with these multiple styles to kind of keep on that is that I like I was saying I find that I want to sound as authentic as I possibly can because I know that when you get somebody like Eminem, it has nothing to do with him being black and white. It's because he's been around hip hop his whole life. He's worked at it. He's authentically sounding
he's
like
really good at it.
He's really good at it, and there's a reason because he's just been in that. And I know somebody like myself with country, I'm now starting to get into my third big gigging country band, and so now I'm starting to sort of sound like a country player. Before, when I first started, I didn't really know what I was doing country wise.
Right.
I knew what I was doing playing wise, but not country. And so like when I listen to piano, I'm personally not a big fan of piano in country. I haven't heard very many guys do it well. Though,
well, I got one name for you, dude.
Yeah.
Floyd Kramer.
Floyd Kramer,
Floyd, Mother Humping Kramer.
Yeah.
And one song, The Last Date. That is Country Piano 101. And that song, he sold more records than Elvis and the Beatles. He was also the first musician to use an infomercial. What we call them infomercials now. He sold his records direct on television.
Oh, wow.
Floyd Kramer plays the hits.
Yeah, wow.
And that was the commercial that came on the 3 channels that you could get on your TV.
So that was 50s then?
Early 60s.
Early 60s, yeah.
Maybe middle. But he was also the guy who played on every session in Nashville. The kickoff to Crazy.
Oh,
that's Floyd.
Oh, wow.
He was an A-lister.
Sure.
In the Columbia Studios.
Top of the
Studio
food chain.
B. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and Pig Robbins was another guy just like that. But there's a lot more piano in classic country than I think people get. And the fact that Jerry Lee had most of his biggest hits as a country artist. And his country playing, of course, it's going to be Jerry Lee at some point where he's got to have the last word, flip his hand up the top of the keyboard. But his country playing is outstanding. And another thing about country piano too is that if you and the bass player have to lock, you've got to play exactly the same walk-ups, the same turns, you know, if you're going down to the 4, up to the 4. But once you do that, the rhythm section suddenly just absolutely sucks together because that bass line is being emphasized by an octave, you know, with the piano. And like a lot of classic country records have both stand-up bass and what's called a tic-tac bass. Like a P bass with a real bright pick, but muted like
yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
You get double bass tracks on a lot of classic country records. Yeah. But a piano and a bass can do that as well. And when it does lock down, man, dance floor fills up.
Yeah. I guess one of the reasons why I've noticed some guys that try that again are back to this thing of,
you can really screw up a country song by playing blues piano in it. When you start flatting those thirds and sevenths, those are not in the melody line anywhere. Country singers are not known for bending half steps, it's always whole steps. So when you start putting those things in, it sounds wrong.
Sounds too bluesy or something.
Yeah, it just if you do the same lick, if you do the same lick with a whole step, like a steel player, ding ding. Yeah. You try and flat the third or the seventh, or do one of those accidentals,
right.
For a reason they call them that.
Right.
Then yeah, it changes the character of the song.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one guy we had come into this was a band back in the day, he was doing big like octave style chords and stuff, like more like a classical player, because he was kind of more of a classical kind of guy, or at least classically trained. And I felt that like he was doing what you're saying, where he was fighting with the bass the whole time. You know, him and the bass were trying to do the same thing, but they weren't doing the same thing. And the sound of it sounded too classical, just like you're talking about. This is sounding too bluesy, you know. And so that was one. And I've seen more people do that before, where they'll kind of, like, I know a lot of jazz guys will maybe talk about what general 3 octaves you need to stay in, you know, in general, like for comping or something, is where not soloing, but comping, like. Right. And I think that guy was down one octave too low or something.
And it muddied it up.
And it was the style too. It definitely muddied it up, but it was the style of that. And then also, like, I found a problem once in a while where
in country, perhaps in no other genre, your best choice is to play the melody. You play the melody, you've done the right thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And it always sounds good.
Well, especially if you nail it. Yeah. which strangely enough is harder than, you know, you say, "Oh, just play the melody."
Yeah.
Okay, that means you have to know it and have practiced it. You can't just run a riff. Yeah. You play the melody, and then people say, "That's the song." You know? Right. You throw too much other stuff in there, like. You know, you go to the foundation and you listen to these guys run these charts, and you have no idea what song they're playing.
Yeah.
You know, they played the head 15 minutes ago, and they've been exploring ever since, which is the point of that art form.
Right.
But at some point, you got to look up and say, "Guys, I don't know where the one is. You know, I haven't heard a melody since you started. Right. I know you're coming back to it to finish, but it's okay to bring that back in a little bit personally."
Yeah, because I think you're right. I mean, how many country tunes make the solo the melody, and it sounds wonderful. You know, they'll put it on, like our band, they let me play the violin, so they sing it first, and then they have the violin on it, and it sounds great. Right. You know, I mean, it sounds just really nice. And so, like, I guess the other one was, like, in my other band.
And you can certainly ask too much of any given genre. You know, like, you don't have to try and pile everything into one type. It's okay to have a bag and do that bag there, and a bag and do that there.
Yeah, I like that. And like, I guess the other one was that when in my other band, when I had a piano, so we talked for a minute about the piano and guitar not linking up or battling each other. Yeah. And then in my other band, I had a 5-piece, so it was me, guitar, piano, bass, drums, and so I noticed that if I want this piano and the guitar to be chording or to comp in however they feel like comping, I was noticing that they're playing in this exact same octave, and they're really muddying each other. And so it was like using the piano to muddy with the bass, and then using the piano to muddy with guitar.
Where so much of that comes from too is not only just the voicings in your chords, it's the rhythm pattern you pick.
Yeah.
Once you start separating the rhythm patterns and finding an accent pattern that is different from other instruments, even if you're in the same octave and a half, suddenly it has its own place in a mix or in a song.
Yeah, and it pops, right? It comes. You can hear the piano, hear the guitar.
You can be as creative with rhythm as you can with melody or harmony.
Yeah. And
that's a very difficult thing to focus on. You know, just get a 10-fingered drummer, okay?
Yeah.
The piano is a percussion instrument.
Yeah.
You hit it. You just happen to have a bunch of notes underneath your fingers while you're doing it. But finding that spot, and I'm lucky enough with the Nace brothers. Jimmy Nace is he decorates during the song for the most part. He's a great slide player, and he has interesting inversions and stuff, and he's not a rhythm player much per se. It's because that's my job. So I'm over here, you know, I play the song, and he's over there going, oh yeah, yeah, doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
Yeah, funky, you know.
Right.
But that division of labor, especially rhythmically, can open up a mix.
Yeah, and I like that you said that, because and that's what I kind of maybe sort of tried to tell them, is that kind of what you just described, and you can do this either way, where you have the piano kind of rocking some pretty heavy chords, and they're doing a lot of the chord work basically, but then you could, if you wanted to, have the guitar kind of comp single note style instead of comp chord style, and that's kind of what you just said,
some of my
right?
favorite guitar players, and I swear if I find a guy who can do this and nothing but, I'm gonna hire him, and I don't care what it's gonna take. The Skank. James Brown guitar, for example. That kind of style guitar can work in almost any genre, just because of its simplicity, and it adds punch to the rhythm, and adds just enough support for a melody, and you can be its own melody with just one or two notes.
Yeah.
Like that kind of guitar playing is sadly disappearing art form.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, whatever words you want to use to describe it, but that's like either like a single note kind of a thing, or like a riff style, right? Because the piano's not really, if you're in that mode, the piano's not really doing a riff. They're chording, right? You're talking about Dennett, and Dennett, you know. So
great horn sections do that.
Right.
You know, and a guitar can be a horn section in that respect.
Yes.
You know, same
take over that role.
Harmonica players, when they're really good, they know how to comp. You know, I know it's an oxymoron again. Really good harmonica players. No offense to all the great harmonica players out there. I love you. You know, I work with a number of you. You're beautiful people.
On a tangent, I'm kind of over harmonica, dude. In town, I'm kind of over it, man.
It's the easiest instrument to piss people off with.
Yeah.
And if
bring in your you know, twin reverb for this jam, and then your triple stack, and then you're like, oh yeah, my harmonica.
Yeah,
you know,
bullet mic.
It's just like, oh my gosh.
Oh well.
But so two things. First of all, talk about what you just kind of, because you just said something really interesting, how sometimes it's hard for people to get in that mindset of when you're comping and the rhythm of the comping. And I've noticed that with my students, that's one of the first things I try to tell them, is that, and jazz guys blow this theory out of the water every time you watch them play anything, is that you can play all sorts of notes, right? You can go out of key, you can come back in. I mean, your notes are really, it's not that they're irrelevant, but what makes it sound really good is the rhythm. So like, talk about that for a second.
Put whatever you want in between, knowing you're going to start right on the downbeat and end right on a downbeat.
Yeah.
Whatever happens in between, that's a journey. That is, you know, that's just ideas that are coming and going, and you almost think about what might happen after something you just played rather than what you just played. There's an apocryphal story, kind of like that. Young trumpet player learns Cherokee, and he goes to Dizzy Gillespie's jam at the Coca-Cola Club, and he gets up there, and he's sweating, and he blows his thing, and he nails it, and the crowd's going crazy, and he comes off, and Mr. Gillespie's sitting at his table, and he says, Diz, thank you so much for letting me do the jam, man. How was it? And Dizzy looks at him and says, man, you sound real good, cat. I tell you, if you leave some holes, some music might fall out.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things in the world to learn is what not to play.
Yeah.
And rhythmically, when if you just breathe, because pianos don't breathe.
Neither does mine. You can just go.
Right.
Go.
Right. And adding breath to anything that you play just makes it more human.
Right.
And people will respond to that whether they know why they're doing it or not. If you breathe somewhere, then the ear gets a chance to catch up. And okay, you took a moment. We all collected ourselves after that flurry of whatever it was you played. Now you're going to do something else. Great. Right. Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah, right. And that'd be probably a obviously good piece of advice in a rhythm sense of, there's a whole bunch of things that this benefits, taking this idea of doing different kinds of rhythms. That could be what, like triplets. That could be using space. That could be don't come in on the downbeat, come in on the and, etc. etc.
Find a different accent pattern for a part. And
accents is another one.
And your comping will suddenly become an integral part of the song, and nobody can play it without that.
Right.
Rather than just forcing it, cramming it all in there.
Yeah, and that'll make you, obviously, just thinking of different rhythms, all of a sudden your stuff sounds like way cooler, right?
Totally. And it changes your melodic sense because you're not just it's you just took out that and you took out that and it went wait, was the tape rolling?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my part now.
Yeah. And I really like that, man, because that's something that is really key with.
It's easy enough to talk about, but in the heat of the moment,
everybody always forgets.
Yeah.
Especially guitar, piano, violin. All of us that don't have to breathe.
You have to discipline yourself enough to remember to do that, just to stop every once in a while.
Right.
And stop in unexpected places and see what people do. It's amazing.
Jazz guys are great at that, right?
They can. The good ones are.
The good ones are, yeah. They're the best out of these improv genres, I think, of doing the
right. At a level of education that these guys are dealing with, when you have to already concern yourself with the modes you're working through, where you're going with them. Yeah. Sometimes modern jazz gets, it's not even modern, but the bop era fell under the tyranny of swing. Like nobody can play jazz unless everything's dotted constantly. And okay, could we just play a samba once in a while, something.
Yeah, and so I think that's probably good, because this whole show that I'm doing is kind of teaching style, just sharing with people, and I think that would probably be a really good general. Would you say? I need to ask. Would you say that would be a good, maybe not rule number one, but rule number 1 or through 5 with improv in general? Is think about your rhythm.
Remember the rhythm.
Yeah.
Don't discount it. Don't worry about the scales that you're playing as much as the time in which you are playing them.
Yeah.
Constant. If you got a cool lick, great. Dress it up by an interesting rhythm pattern, or take that same lick and change the rhythm.
Yeah.
And use that as an exercise tool.
Yeah.
Like, here's a cool lick. Now, what if I, put a quarter note in the middle instead of a half note, or alter the phrasing of it.
Now you got 2 riffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you got more material, right?
But the same notes, different rhythm.
Right.
Hey, didn't have to change my hand position.
Right. And now with the rest too, is that now you've extended your material too, because now you within 2 hours of a gig, you now have all of these spaces where you don't have to throw in your good riffs, and you can save them.
I've seen it. You've seen it. Everybody's seen it, where somebody wants to go ahead and take another time around, and they got about 3/4 of the way through it. And like, damn it,
I didn't quite have
have
enough.
to
Yeah,
get,
yeah.
you know, if you start lower and slower and let
You
it
build. Yeah.
then you know you can end up on a high point when you stop and people say, "Oh yeah, man, that was good. I like that journey you took me on."
Right. Yeah. So I think that's probably
Not
great.
to say that coming out blazing can be fun,
Sure.
but once you've started on top, you got nowhere to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably like, I mean that's. So now we're kind of into soloing more than, and comping can work this way too, I guess.
Well, but you have to serve the song, and especially backing up a soloist.
Yeah.
If you can feel the energy and of course, listening on stage, if you can't hear somebody, turn down. Don't ever make anybody turn up. Whatever volume somebody's taking the front of that, you got to be underneath it. Got to be underneath it.
How many guys don't do that?
Too many. Be underneath somebody else. And if once that happens, then hopefully they'll do that for you as well. Yeah. And then trying to respond to where the soloist is going. I know.
We can. Please, just see what I'm doing. Just osmose this and figure it out. Right. Yeah.
Hey man, I'm just spreading some kindness here.
Yeah.
I'll take it back.
Yeah. So like, so I mean, improv's a crazy thing because that would probably be. I mean, that'd probably be my, in my improv class, if I did one, would be how to build your solo. I mean, that's the general framework, right, of a soloing 101 is you do less, you build it, and then maybe like the second, you've got 2 rounds, right? You do the 1 round, you start building, the second round, then now you're going, and so
it's always okay to start with the melody.
Yeah. And then
so that everybody's got it in their head. Okay, that's what he's going to start with, and then you can start to play with the ideas that the melody gave you. But if you don't start with that, if you've already started with the ideas that are post melody, like no context.
That's because then you're in the mind frame, not the audience too, but you're in the mind frame of the melody as well, right? And then you
mindful of the melody while while creating a new one.
And then so on comping, that's one of the things that's been musically the most, not even the most challenging, but the most fun, I think, for me, is to learn when to play. That whole that's to me is the I say this is that I mean, I'm really generalizing music, but to me, if you got some pretty good rhythm, you sort of kind of sound like you know what you're doing. We can go to some jams, and most people there have some okay rhythm. They can be up there and do logistically do it. The professionals sound like they have this other kind of touch thing happening where they can kind of get some mood and some tone, but then the really good guys know when to play. Because you can see some professionals out there that don't really know the logistics of when to throw in a really good comp riff or how to do a really good build of a solo, and that's what I always think with the when kind of question. And with all of us that have played, even I've played 30 years now, I'm still pretty young, but the playing of it and the adjusting to the tone and the mood and the rhythm, that's feeling fairly second nature to me. But I have to use all the rest of my brain power through the song to think about this when, and it's really nice that I don't have to think. I can now think about the when because I have all this technique down, but the when stuff cracks me up because so many guys don't do the I'm comping as a violin, so we got violin, guitar, bass, drums, and the guy's singing. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, nothing verse. I just completely set out, right? Come in, do not much the first chorus, come back second chorus. Okay, now I'm gonna throw in 2 riffs. End of the little break of the vocals, then the end of the vocals into the chorus, and I'm throwing in 2 riffs.
Or always play on the intro.
Yeah, and then you can back off if you want.
The listener knows that instrument is going to be in the song.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
It's introducing the band. Everybody plays on the intro.
Yeah.
And then put them back.
Yeah. So what would be some of your advice in general? So I'm specifically talking about like comping right now with either horn players or
Right,
guitar, piano, or
Well,
whatever.
eye contact. Look at the guys on stage with you.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, I have a blast having fun with guys on stage. When you're playing, you don't have to look at your own hands to play. You know, even the simplest parts are more fun because then you can look up and see who's thinking about what they're doing, and they're looking around, and you can look at the drummer and go, "Yeah, man, I hear what you're doing there," and then maybe give him a little answer to something he did. He'll hear that, and then next thing you know, he's listening to you, and if you throw something out,
Yeah,
he'll
he
jump
does the
on that.
triplet right after you do the triplet, etc. Yeah.
And that's just a blast, man.
Yeah.
That makes going on stage worthwhile.
Right.
Those unknowable moments where you communicate with fellow players.
How many times you see a guitar player sitting like this?
Most.
How many times you see bands up here? How many times you see a drummer look like this? Drives me nuts, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like you're not even looking at your instrument now.
And even the way I have to sit at the saloon with basically my back to the steel player, I'm playing sideways, looking over my shoulder most of the time.
They turned you around the other night, right? You brought in your keyboard, and you were facing us now,
Facing
which
the
is
wall.
like, thank you.
Well, no, I'm still facing the wall. I'm not facing into the stage.
Oh, okay.
But
I thought you were
I've
facing the
turned
stage the
enough,
other night.
you know,
Yeah.
I've turned enough that I'm almost my chest is parallel to the front of the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm able to get a good eye on everybody and see what's going on.
But you're trying to engage with them.
Well,
You know?
that's, you know, I can play solo gigs whenever I want.
Right,
I ain't
right.
doing it now.
Yeah.
I got you guys up here. Hey,
Right.
let's do some stuff.
Yeah. And that's again about I mean, that's just another little silly moment of the adjustment stuff that I'm kind of talking about with not just genres, but moments where you have a band as opposed to solo, right? And you're kind of it seems silly and trivial to look up, how you're changing your mentality, but it's different, right? I mean,
Don't forget, it is the entertainment business.
Yeah.
If it was only about the music, we'd all wear tuxedos and have symphony tickets.
Yeah.
Watch guys read charts.
Yeah. So last thing on the genres and stuff. So talk about a little bit of as a piano player, what are some like differences? I mean, you can do maybe kind of. I mean, you could talk about any of them you want, I guess, but maybe like the differences of like how you would, if you even take a different mentality coming at jazz or country or blues or classical or whatever. Is there different? How do you deal with that? Or
I'd
maybe
say
you
that,
don't.
Well, there's an underlying musicality that has to apply. Now, specifics, certainly with any kind of classical style of piece, you have to have it internalized to the point where an interpretation of that piece is not going to surprise you in performance. You already know how you want these phrases to go, and you've worked to get them there. Other styles of music insist that that it's a more immediate idea, and the arc of concentration, especially in traditional classical music, is a lot shallower and a lot longer. Whereas in pop music, 3 minutes, you hit it
And you're
and
done.
quit.
Yeah.
But
That's
you have to.
interesting.
There has to be energy there.
Yeah.
Not unlike there has to be energy in more traditional dead white guy music. But it also has to have there's a lot more breath, mentally, if you will. I know that a lot of piano players struggle with this, the classical players that I know, that they forget to breathe. And physically, you literally forget to breathe, and that affects your energy level. Suddenly, you're just,
Wow.
You just have to remember to add oxygen to yourself in order to perform. And it's easy to forget to do that when playing any kind of, etude that's longer than a couple of minutes.
Right.
And that affects the energy that you are able to put through the piece.
I guess like one thing that I do, I guess, is that obviously kind of the logistics are a little bit different when, like, let's take like jazz and country, for example, is that like on jazz as the kind of horn player-ish, that's kind of what my role is in a jazz band, is sort of be like a horn player. And so when somebody else is doing a solo, I seriously just sit there, right? And this is what you're kind of supposed to do a little bit as the horn type player. You just do nothing. But in country and blues, for example, like when the singer is singing, I am allowed to throw little comp things in there, so that's kind of a little bit of difference, I guess, where you kind of do, if it's the kind of the straight ahead standards, I mean, you do your head whenever your solo is and head, and you're standing there the rest of the time. But with country, there's a lot more in and out, I guess, and blues would be very similar. So I guess for me, that would be a little bit different mentality there. The other one too is that this is kind of what my mentality is, and I don't know if it's right or not, but when I get into country, those ba-da-da-da-da, those little cliche stuff sounds so good. They sound so good. Other stuff can sound good too, but in jazz, it's not that they don't sound good, but weird stuff sounds good. Weird rhythms and altering and like.
How to be able to.
Do you have a difference in mentality there with those two, or do you just kind of come
respecting the genres, to a certain degree? That obviously you're just wearing a different hat. Saying, all right, this is appropriate for this. This isn't appropriate as much.
So I guess I'm trying to ask, like, what are those? I'm trying to make examples of
Well, like comping in country, I tend to play less, just because if there's no acoustic guitar that's on stage, just doing doing the root chords, that's me. I'm doubling the bass line, and I'm playing the root chords in a rhythm, just doing a country shuffle, two-stepping all the way. And if something comes up that I need to, if something needs to be noted after the, in between. Especially in country, you sing in between. You play in between the vocal lines. Try not to step on
the vocal.
Now in jazz,
because who cares
blues,
about us? It's the vocal, right?
Well, you're supporting it.
You're supporting it. Yeah.
Maybe if country is a pyramid with that vocal line as the blues and jazz maybe have a little bit less of a point and a little bit more of a plateau, and it's more of a mound than a pyramid.
Yeah. I like that.
There can be more going on the top that you can catch.
Right. That's interesting.
Or but it's also not quite as sharp a point as what country music has. And the lyric in country is sacrosanct.
Right.
If you can't hear the words, that's American poetry is in country music. 3 chords and the truth, man.
That's different than rock, right? Rock. I mean, you hear some of the lyrics. It's like
rock and roll is a contact sport.
Yeah, it's like who cares about you don't even know what they're singing.
I don't want to think about that.
Yeah,
I just want to feel it.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. So I don't know. That's just I kind of kept on this because I'm just always fascinated by different genres and stuff.
Like you want in specifics. How do you do that better? Well, be aware that in country the decoration should be limited until it's called for. In the other formats, a little more decoration is appreciated because it assists the point of the form. So in that sense, country especially, you can play a little less and sound better doing it.
Yeah. And because of the genre, it's like it's got kind of and I think this is really legitimate because like in jazz, all the stuff, it's got kind of a complicated, chaotic kind of feel to it to some people. To us, we know what's going on and we can hear the.
Well, I can understand that it's complicated. I can't understand it.
Right.
Per se. Dude, I totally dig what you're doing there. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. But in country,
which is why I don't really like playing a lot of bop.
Right, I don't either.
I'd have to study to the point of it would just wring the love of the form out for me. I just want to be able to sit there like a fan and go, wow, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd never heard it before.
Yeah.
They probably hadn't either. They just made it up.
I mean, in country, I guess everything is so simplified that simpler everything sounds great. Well, and in jazz, you get really rewarded for complex. It can be simple too and sound wonderful, but you get You don't really get rewarded in country.
Is much more naked.
Yeah.
If you screw it up, everybody knows.
Yeah.
You hear a bass player miss one walk up,
big 4-chord, and it's bad.
and it's like,
yeah, you're getting the
All
looks
right.
for everybody. Yeah.
You know, it's scrubbed that clean that you have to just, and it has to feel. Like country rhythm sections get a bad rap. Not that that's a genre-bending pun at all. They get an unfortunate reputation as being boring, but it has to be so right to feel proper.
Right.
That you just don't have the room to screw up, and some people think that it can sound monotonous and repetitive. No, man, once that feel gets locked in, that's where it's got to be. And you know, that's maybe the joy of playing country in a certain way, is that the commitment to exactly what you're going to play when you're going to play it, and then hitting it, going, yeah, just got that right. Moving on.
It seems like to me that you have to like. This killed me when I was the first time I was really not studying drums and bass and country, but like it killed me that what makes it so hard is you have to stay there. You know, it's like the jazz guys want to, and definitely jazz drummers.
Which is the point.
Well, not jazz drummers, because they're usually very, very accomplished and stuff, but a lot of guys just want to fill on everything, and you gotta just stay there. And that's what that's why it drives people nuts. That's why some guys literally, it's not the technique, it's like their brain won't let them stay there. They have to be doing stuff. They have to be filling
like a sound guy in front of a great band.
Mm-hmm.
The band in a room that they don't work together.
That's a great analogy.
When the band knows what it's doing, listens to each other, the monitors are at a level that's perfectly acceptable.
Sound guys shouldn't have to do nothing.
And sound guys hate that. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something I can do to make this better. Maybe a little more reverb on the second tom here. Oh wait, here's a thing that's coming up, and I get.
He's already doing it. They're already doing it for you, man.
It's okay. It's okay. Have a smoke.
Yeah, go out and have a cigarette. You're good, man. Yeah.
There are some sound guys that have the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. That know the material well enough that they can add in a certain effect or change a certain thing. Yeah. But for the most part, the best sound guy has done all of his work before the show starts. Yeah. I mean, you went up and you check levels, and he got tones, and then all you should be doing is putting out fires. Mm-hmm. If something, something goes wrong, rather than trying to improve what's already there. Yeah. But that's best case scenario.
Yeah. Last thing on this, because we could talk about this all night. It's so interesting, and it's something. The how much to play and what should you be doing in each genre is like. I mean, it's endless, and it's stuff that a lot of people are not very good at. But
there's some basic fundamental points of each one, and then everybody has to interpret how they're going to do that. Yeah, and it's never an end. You never say, "Oh, I finally got that taken care of."
Yeah,
it's every constant. Time you take the stage, you have to work on those kind of things, because that's what makes those nights the nights that they are. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you're paying attention to it every time. Mm-hmm. Not because it's something that you're working on learning, and then you learn and then you stop. It's just a thing that you always do. Like breathing. Mm-hmm. You don't think about breathing, but you have to do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned too about, like, I've asked a couple people this, and I've actually heard some different opinions about this, but definitely this happens a lot at the jams. When you have like 8 people on stage and people don't understand you were talking about having to fight against the guitar player, and how when you don't have the guitar player, you almost have a little bit of, this is my opinion, but you have a little bit more room there to do something. And when you have, like in our other country band, we had drums, bass, we had a straight up rhythm guitar, we had a lead guitar, we had a steel and a violin, right? So the rhythm guy is just strumming the whole time, and then
mostly acoustic.
Yeah, it was. It was acoustic, and then we had electric, lead guitar, and then steel and violin. So we've got
invariably it's that acoustic rhythm guy who's got the most expensive guitar on stage.
We had
this is a 48 Martin D45, and it's worth $30,000, and this is what I do on it.
Yeah, right.
And that's all I have to do, because if electricity goes off, this is going to sound great.
But I guess my point is that we've got 3 dudes sitting there, the violin, steel, and lead, all trying to fit their stupid little riff in between those vocals, because they all were okay.
Right.
You know, they all were good enough and competent enough at country to know that's what they needed to do.
Right.
But we would all be trying to fit our and so now. Like,
the
you know what I'm
technique that I
saying?
learned playing with the Nace Brothers, especially when we do our Roots of Steel show once a year on Father's Day, the Knuckleheads, we get a steel player and do Golden Age country, nothing but. You know ahead of time for every song who's going to fill on what verse. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
And the general pattern being, if there's 3 places to fill, the steel will take the first one, guitar player will take the second one, I'll take the third.
Yeah.
As a general, just set that up ahead of time.
Yeah, so that
fills on what verse.
That obviously fixes that problem in 2 seconds. You know, to know who's comping. I guess the only reason why I don't love that is does it come out too patterny? You know, does it come out too contrived or whatever?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, in the genre itself, it's perfectly fine to have that accepted pattern of who's going in what order.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a jammier situation with that kind of stuff. When you always say, all right, you take this one, you take that one, you take this one, and everybody will know coming up when they're coming in.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got the wherewithal to rehearse enough, you say, all right, on this song, let's do it the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Go here, here, and here.
Yeah.
But knowing that there's gonna be a pattern.
Yeah.
It
is
isn't
huge.
patterny.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. If it was always the same order.
Like solos is another great example where you're splitting these solos, and the steel takes the first one every single. So you know, I mean, I think that could probably get.
Well, you know, it can, but if you at least start with that, then you're not stepping on each other, and it's a sight better than that.
Right. I mean, what you know,
That's
you had a choice.
First thing to do
want?
is that.
Yeah. And I guess maybe I played with what was that guy's name? Paul Gomez, was that his name? He's a saxophone player in town. But we were up at where was it? Dave Hayes' jam, and he came up there one night, and
one of Dave Hayes' several jams.
Yeah, he has some good ones in town, a couple of the better ones, and But me and Paul were standing there, and he's a jazz guy. You know, he's a really good jazz player, and so he came to the blues jam. And the whole time, I could just feel that it was absolutely wonderful. You know, my eyes are like this on him, and I'm like, okay, he's doing it. And then he starts, and I just, you know, and then I started to do one, and he puts this thing down. I was just like, I mean, we were just like you said, we're sitting there staring at each other, and it was wonderful.
Courtesy.
It was professional courtesy. And we were able to get both worlds, right? We were able to not step on each other, and we were able to not make it sound the same every single song. So it was, you know, but you know that can only happen when the person's sitting there and they're fast enough to catch it, and they're, you know, like,
and they're open to the idea.
That
somebody else might solo here, you know.
Holy moly. Yeah. So anyway, well, I'm glad to hear some of your opinions about that. You're Kansas City, so you've played in town for a bit. You talked a little bit about the, obviously there was, you know, 20s through 40s in general, everywhere was ridiculous for jazz. You know, I mean, it was everywhere. But I've heard some people just like yourself talk about even in this town up to the 90s was pretty decent. Like there's a lot of work and stuff. Like talk about that.
Well, it's just true. Bars had bands.
Yeah.
That was the entertainment. Good, better, and different. And there were a lot of great ones. And there were a lot of places to play. You know, and there was... the competition wasn't that... You know, you had certain rooms that certain groups of guys played, certain rooms that other groups of guys played, and occasionally they'd get a little cross action going, you know. But there was enough work for everybody, and that nobody had to feel that... you know, railing against the market forces that, you know, we can blame cable television and we can blame the internet and all the things that keep people home. Drunk driving laws were a big thing.
I totally agree with that. I've said that before, that, I mean, that, you know, even the smoking laws too, it was another thing that kind of, I think it was a good idea and they needed to do something with it, but the bottom line is it did affect the bar scene, right? I mean, it impacted it.
In a certain way, but the idea being that, yeah, man, I love drinking and smoking and driving, but I also love going to hear a band.
Yeah.
And if I have to give up those other 3, band's gonna win.
Yeah.
That night.
Yeah.
That's what I decide to do. If I'm gonna do the other 3, well, the other 2, because drinking and driving, thank God for Uber. It's $9 from Westport to my house.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that, which is what I'll be doing after we're done with this.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
And so so for in town here,
Yeah, but there was a pretty low period there between the 90s and the 2000s. But I can see more places having more bands now, I think, just because enough people realize that is a important part of culture. That you have to be in the room at the time with the guys. You can watch streaming all you want, and all it does is make you sit and think, man, I should have been there. I wish I was there. How recorded music and sales is dropping, and streaming is taking over, but the concert industry is making more money than ever. I mean, that's why guys don't sell records anymore. They stay out on the road. Because that's where the money is. Is actually playing live.
Right.
When you get .0007 cents per Spotify play, you got to show up where somebody's paying $50 a ticket to make any money and sell merchandising. I mean, there's more money in T-shirts than in records.
Yeah, well, that's something else. I mean, that's sad to tell you the truth, but
well, again, people want to identify with the artist and they want a piece of memorabilia.
Right.
Because it's streaming, you don't own it.
Yeah.
You can't play it anytime you want to, per se.
The album and
renting
the t-shirt,
music.
The album and the T-shirt last, and I guess the memories last, but the show doesn't. Show's over. I mean,
right,
so that's
right.
another.
But I got a T-shirt.
But I got a T-shirt. Yeah.
My girlfriend was so very kind. I've had, I got 2.5 drawers in my dresser full of old band shirts and shows and festivals and stuff. And I could fit some of them. Some of them were just falling apart. I'm like, I don't want to throw them all away. She says, well, I'll make a quilt out of them. Which she did.
Wow, that's cool.
I call it my Whoopee. It's 7 foot tall,
oh, wow.
5 feet wide, and flannel back.
That's cool. I've never heard of anybody do that before.
Oh, and she said, I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
But I've got, 20 years worth of cool rock and roll T-shirts and a big old blanket that I could throw on the bed to lay on the couch with. Yeah, it's a very cool
That's cool,
idea.
man. That's a cool memorabilia kind of a thing.
Yeah, and you can just pick it every once in a while and go, oh, geez, that was 15 years ago. I remember that show.
Yeah.
And they're not stuck in a drawer and they're getting thrown away.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. I'm a big fan of Kansas City. Coming from Wichita, there's not much going on there.
If I remember correctly, was about all was ever going on there.
Yeah, right. And there's
Black
a lot
and
of
white
stuff going.
dance floor.
There's a lot of stuff going on at the college, obviously, but the Wichita State, but up here, this is just, it's great. There's a lot of jams, and there's still an appreciation level in the city for it. I think, compared to, I was using Cincinnati as I don't even know what the music scene's like, but other cities in the country that are 3-ish million whatever people, I don't think they're gonna have the jazz scene that we have here in the blues scene.
It's ingrained into the Kansas City ideas as a city.
Yeah,
this is what we do. I don't know of many other cities in the country that have an organ jazz room.
Yeah,
Green Lady Lounge.
Yeah,
what do? B3 Jazz.
Yeah. That place was
7-8 out. They do matinees with B3 Jazz.
Yeah, that place was killing the other night. I went in there. It was Chris Hazelton's group.
Oh yeah,
and it was the late Friday or whatever.
Ken Levern.
Yeah, he doesn't play with him, but maybe on the same night, back to back.
I didn't know if he actually did the Hazelton gig as well.
Yeah, no, because it's just Chris. Yeah, but or he's the only one playing organ, but him, Matt Hopper, a bunch of dudes. But
oh yeah.
But they had full tables.
Hopper's a good player.
Yeah, Hopper's good player, man. Good guitar player. And I'm getting him on the show here soon in the next month. But
cool.
But anyway, so I'm really glad to be here and stuff in Kansas City because it's a really cool supportive scene. A couple more here for you. What was a thing in a previous band that didn't really work so good, like personality wise, or
well, like I mentioned in the pre-interview, I had one band, the second band I played in when I was still living in Minnesota, another pop metal band, got a deal on margarita flavored fog juice, and of course at the time you have to have fog on stage. These were the bands. These were the bands when setting up the rig took longer than playing the show.
Yeah, wow.
When you had 4 18 cabs aside.
Screw that,
and
man.
I mean, a 32
Made for a
foot
good
straight
show,
truck,
though. Huh?
That was the whole point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever remember the Lone Star here in Kansas City.
Yeah.
That was the rock room in town.
Yeah.
That and the Chateau Inn and another one. And the production level was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was supposed to be.
Sure.
And everything I owned for a year smelled like I was at a tiki bar and had stuff poured all over me.
No,
and I just
that's
couldn't.
funny.
To this day, I can't drink margaritas.
Yeah,
Because
wow.
it reminds me of that.
Yeah, wow.
So that be careful of the scent that you choose for your fog. Because I know the DJs are doing it now. So as a warning to you kids doing the EDM, choose your fog flavors carefully.
Yeah, oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Bridging the gap here.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
funny.
back when the fog was funny smelling. Now it's all cannabis oil.
That's a thing that, other things that go badly in bands. I've been really lucky. Most of the bands, the few bands that I've been with the Nace Brothers 21 years.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's a heck of a run there, man.
That's crazy. And the things that go good about them.
Please mention names and out them, please. If you
All right, things that go good.
for people that
When,
that went bad.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm trying to get you in trouble here, okay?
I can tell you, never pay a certain guitar player before the gig. I can tell you, always make sure a certain bass player hasn't been partying the weekend before because you'll have to get his bass out of hock for a weekday gig. Be wary of that. And the worst thing about working with musicians, they're musicians. We're all
50-year-old children.
We're all fundamentally twisted. 12. I'm the oldest 12-year-old I know.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I
Plan
keep
on
saying
growing
we're
up.
adults technically.
Yeah, and that's ishy.
That's issue.
Child that's grown old.
Yeah. What was a couple things either from the Nace Brothers or whatever that you really enjoyed, like a band leader or certain songs in a band or personalities?
Well,
or what was the thing in
one
the
thing
band
that Dave
were-
Nace has that I've had this great privilege in working with him for so long. He is one of the best booking members of a band. He can talk to people and just put them at ease, make them feel comfortable doing something, no matter what. There were times when when we'd take a break during a 4-hour bar gig, which is what I came up playing every night. This whole 90 minutes and you're done kind of thing, it makes no sense to me. I would have to walk him away from the stage. This is before he got his in-ear monitors. He used to have wedges on stage, and he was singing and playing the drums at the same time, which he still does, standing. Because people would want to start talking to him, and he'd want to talk to them right in front of the PA speakers. So they're shouting at each other, leaning in their ears, going, "Dave, you got 3 more sets to sing, dude."
Right. Yeah.
And whoever was talking to him, and he'd be off in a conversation, I'd have to grab them both and say, "Hey guys, this is important. I love you. Let's just walk around the corner real quick.
Yeah.
Get away from the path of my lead singer having to shout at you."
That's happened to me a lot. Where like at the
Pick, and that's an important. Just in terms of club dynamics, pick your spot. Get off stage, pick a spot, let people come by and talk through the break about whatever you want to.
That's interesting.
That's a certain amount of staging, if you will, because people want to talk to you.
Yeah, they want to
But pick a spot where you're most comfortable and away from as much break music as you can. That lets everybody be able to talk and relax and not feel like they're fighting that dB level again.
That's
As
interesting.
performers, it's just an easier thing to do. It was different when you could still smoke in clubs, and I would have the merch stuff set up in a back corner, and that's where I would just, as soon as that was over, I'd back in the corner and have a little ashtray and have a whiskey brought to me at some point, and I could just sit there and sell stuff, relax, and have people come by.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I hardly
And
ever,
being gracious. And Dave Nace is one of the most gracious people I've ever met, in that he's just that guy. And always be gracious when somebody says they like what you do. Say thank you. I catch myself, and there are some guys in town that are some of the best musicians, and they're so self-effacing, it's almost embarrassing. Oh, I'm no good. I can't do that. Man, you're a motherfucker. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're really that good.
Yeah.
Be gracious. You don't have to be arrogant about it at all. Just say, well, thanks, man. I'm glad you're digging it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, knowing.
And when complimenting a fellow musician, be as specific as possible.
Mm.
Because that's the stuff that we
Oh,
can't.
it was good, dude. You know,
Oh,
yeah.
you're awesome. You're ripping.
Yeah.
If you say, man, that turn that you did when you did the
In
you
the
know,
ballad,
went to the tube,
you know,
or, you know, that second phrase in that song,
Yeah.
that shows that you were listening.
Right.
And we all love to hear that
Right.
you
Other
actually
musicians
did
are
something
listening,
cool.
yeah.
Or anybody.
Yeah.
If anybody's
Anybody,
listening,
yeah.
as specific as you can get with a compliment, that means more and more and more the more specific you get.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good piece of advice.
And when complimenting other musicians, do that.
Yeah. Be specific, yeah.
Yeah, as specific as you can possibly remember. If you gotta grab a pen and write something down on your hand, then when you
I
talk
like
to
that,
them,
man.
you know.
Yeah. So last two here, I know we've already talked about a ton of like kind of advice or whatever, but
Pay your taxes quarterly.
pay your taxes quarterly, dude. I started
IRS
doing that 3
so
years ago.
hates me.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
hate me. They've hated me for years. And you talk about lack of maturity. I have a magnificent life. I get to play a lot of great music. I have a
Yeah.
wonderful time. Taxes is my eternal cross to bear.
Mm,
That's the one that's going to follow me through the rest of my life.
yeah.
So if there's any advice I could give, pay a lot more attention to that.
Yeah. That yeah.
It totally sucks at the
You,
time.
you,
It
you have
constantly
to you have to
sucks.
drop your 1,500, 4,000, whatever your amount of taxes is a year, but you have to drop
keep
it
up on
right
it.
there and instead of doing it quarterly. Yeah,
Keep
yeah,
up
yeah.
on that as best as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's
and
a great
claim
piece of advice.
everything.
Hmm.
You wear a pair of underwear on stage, it's stage gear. Write it off.
Yeah, wow.
Itemize, itemize, itemize. Save receipts.
Yeah.
It can be kind of a fun hobby to just be a bit, you know, obsessive about it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think that you're losing money, but it's kind of fun to know that, yeah, I'm getting one over on the government here by itemizing everything.
Yeah.
And almost all legitimate.
Right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
just that's one thing to be. You got to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
You can't just go, whatever. I ain't
Because-
got no money. Where are they going to get it from?
Because I've
They'll wait.
I haven't even talked about that on the show yet with doing taxes and kind of keeping track of that. Because we've talked about just keeping track of your business side in general, and that's obviously another good piece of advice.
Mileage.
But the taxes stuff is interesting because like a lot of people have that question if they're going to claim the gigs or claim their lessons or whatever, and
Right.
I mean my thing is that like
1099s. Did you get paid in a check or cash?
Yeah, right.
If the gig gets paid in a check, then you got to declare it.
you got to declare it, yeah. And the reason why I would argue to do that is for little stuff like me when that little stuff that happens to me, like when you go try to get a new place, apartment, house, whatever, and you're trying to claim income. How are you going to do that?
Right.
You're
on
gonna have
one
to go-
hand, you want as little income as possible, so
Yeah.
you pay low taxes. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
anybody that's trying to get you a car, a house,
Yeah,
or any kind of
you have
credit
to
rating,
claim something, and most like apartments, anyways, or renters around town. I mean, if you bring them, you even like your bank statement, they're gonna take it. You know, they're gonna take it, but
Right.
you've gotta show them something, and so.
Well, let us not forget, being a musician is inherently dangerous.
Mm,
You don't get to have all the benefits of a stable
right.
life and family.
Yeah, it's a
if
bit of a
this is
risk,
the
yeah.
career that you're gonna pick.
Right.
You know, it just goes without saying.
Right.
You know, even cruise ship dudes have problems.
Mm,
You know, symphonies go out of business.
hmm
Right? No matter how stable you think a career in music can be, it won't be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's easier to go into that field as anything else, knowing ahead of time that it's going to be
Right, yeah.
as opposed to coming out of school with an MBA,
Right.
saying, well, now I will be a businessman
Right.
until the business fails
Right.
or you get laid off. The uncertainty in the music business is inherent.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason it's easier
I mean,
for me to blow things off. It's like,
Right,
yeah, I knew the
yeah.
job was dangerous when I took it. What do I care?
Right, and so that would probably be a great piece of advice is don't be delusional in that sense. Like a little bit know what you're getting yourself into
Well,
with that.
You're
right?
gonna be frustrated.
Yeah. Know it,
If
know
you're
it ahead of
not, then
time,
you're not
right?
doing it right.
Yeah.
But know going into it that it's not going to be easy. It's not. If everybody could do it, everybody would.
Right.
Because on one hand, the perceived benefits are awesome, right? Rock star, woo!
Mhm.
and I'm not saying the occasional perk doesn't occur.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Wake up at what time every day?
noonish, not anymore. Not but I'm so lucky to have that little part-time gig working on pianos,
You're right.
John, for the thing, and that's something that I actually really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of being part of my musicianship is to be able to learn all about the instrument itself, how to take it down, how to put it back together, how to tune it, to know the machine, and get paid for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that I can. My Greta keeps telling me, "Well, I'm so glad you got a day job," and I keep trying to figure out how this is a day job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not really a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I love these things. And then now somebody's paying me to go hang out with them 25 hours a week.
Right.
Like, ooh.
Yeah, it's not even really a job. I mean, there's so many perks to it that is so awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
and
again, I got so lucky. It just the right time, right place. This was something I was looking to get into.
How many? So I think I can really only think of maybe one person in town that can really like gig full time and then have a living. I mean, pretty much all the rest of us have to have that other thing.
Right.
And that other thing can be many other,
Right.
I know Matt Hopper worked at UPS for a long
Still
time.
does,
It still
doesn't he?
does
Yeah.
maybe. And it's some luck and some not, but I'm able to teach lessons. So that's my second.
Right,
You're
right.
working on your pianos or a music shop or a church directorship, or
There's
if
a
you're
lot
able
of-
to do
yeah.
the in the music day job,
Right.
which is nice, but
But for a lot of years, all I did was gig and play.
Yeah.
There were a couple of years I had a Plaza gig, Seasons 52, and they were paying Plaza money.
yeah,
And I was getting that twice a week, and playing with the Nace Brothers. I've got my calendars. This is part of the reason the IRS hates me. There were a 3 years where I was making $60,000 a year
yeah.
playing music. And you look at my calendars, and there were months where I had 2 days off.
Right.
I was doing 27, 28 shows a month.
Wow,
And
that's
for
a
me,
lot
I
of
was going,
shows.
I was drinking more money than I ever had in my
Right,
entire life,
right.
right? But every day that I was gigging, which was most, it would be get up about noonish, take a shower, have some coffee, maybe have a little bit to eat, get ready, go to the gig, get done with the gig, have a few post-gig cocktails, go home, get up about noonish, get some coffee, go to the gig. Like, this is exactly how life is supposed to be.
Yes.
And then they took the piano out of Seasons 52.
Yeah.
Corporate decision.
Mm.
Corporate, Darden Restaurant Group owns it, biggest restaurant corporation in the world.
Yeah.
And I suddenly, my income just plummeted. Thud. Oh, this isn't cool.
Yeah.
So, getting back on the hustle,
Yeah.
and then hustling up more solo gigs to try and piece it together. And then this particular gig came down the pipe, working for Keys 44 Kids. Like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had it in my mind that at a certain point, learning more technical ability on the instrument and mechanical and technical ability is a very cool thing, because once you get that registered piano technician's certificate, that's the plumber money in the in the music business. That's $125 an hour to repair and tune pianos.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to get for a reason. You have to be able to do anything that a piano requires. And there's a lot.
Yeah. Piano's a big instrument with a lot of
Yeah.
parts on it.
Well, and for most of its history, and especially anywhere, but most of the history, that was the most expensive piece of furniture in a home.
Yeah. Right.
It's not like people now that buy pianos to fit their decor.
Right.
Before that, it was you buy the piano
And you can get uprights for under $10,000, right?
new. I mean, I can
No,
sell you.
no,
I can sell you one for $300.
Well, sure,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah. I guess not new, but
Take
like
two,
a,
they're small.
like a good one, yeah, or a decent one, not a new one,
Well,
but I mean,
I've got a Steinway 1098 sitting in the shop right now. That's $4,500.
yeah,
And it's
so,
built
yeah.
in the '90s.
Yeah,
And
so
it's a Steinway.
right,
And it's $4,500.
Right.
And you can spend a lot.
sure, yeah. I mean, there's
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about the instrument itself is its durability.
yeah,
I mean, the secondary market in pianos is, part of the reason that we're able to do what we do is that we're like Craigslist under one roof. You can come and see a bunch of other people's old pianos that they've donated because they, taken the time and the effort to sell it in any kind of condition. We get it as a donation. I work on them, get them up to spec, vacuum them out, fix broken hammers. And that way you can come over and the prices are going to be pretty comparable as to what you'd have to go to somebody's house and pay and then haul it off.
Right.
We have movers that do that.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
So the secondary market, although it's soft comparatively to the new market, well, it's stronger than the new market, but the numbers themselves are small. You know, I'm not going to sell a $14,000 Kawai tomorrow. You know, if I sell $14,000 pianos over a month and a half, I'm doing great.
Oh yeah.
And $1,000 gets you a great instrument.
Yeah.
People
man.
overpay that for guitars.
Oh yeah.
You know, come on.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm not sure how we ended up on that.
No, that's all right, man. It's
Just
is what it
other
is.
gigs that
Yeah.
you don't have to ever consider that doing one thing or another. You should do other things. If you're only playing gigs, they can make you a bit myopic. It can shorten your sight so where you don't have anything to bring to what you're doing.
That's interesting.
You know,
yeah.
art has to reflect life at some point. It can't just be.
That kind of happens a lot too. I think with friends too, is that we kind of accidentally keep talking to music people, and that's accidentally who we always.
Your bubble shrinks.
Yeah.
You know, I totally am digging
That's
talking to
interesting,
people who don't play for a living, will never play for a living, don't want to play for a living, but they want a nice piano
Yeah.
because it looks good,
Right.
and that's a big component of the instrument itself. Like I
Right.
was describing about decor, and they get one for their kids just because they want them to learn to play it. You know, and I don't have to convince them to get a legacy instrument. Like, man, I got a Baldwin Acrosonic here, $400. 20 years from now, it'll sound about the same. You know, right on. There you go.
that's
Go for it.
cool.
Have fun.
Yeah. I got one more for you here.
Go ahead.
I've been asking
then
everybody.
it'll be feed the monkey time.
And I know you've done quite a bit of gigs. Can you think of one or two gigs that were absolutely utterly ridiculous, or any moments in the music business that you just kind of never forget?
But when Nace Brothers got asked to play in Antigua for the super yacht races,
Yeah.
there was a club owner in Lake of the Ozarks that also owned a bar in Antigua. They would flip flop during the seasons. You know, work Lake of the Ozarks in the summer, and then the high season there is over the winter. So, and they were huge fans of the band, and they got a co-sponsorship with Mount Gay Rum, and they, you know, spent a whole bunch of money and brought us down for a couple of shows, and we're hanging out with drunk British sailors. Pete Townsend's boat was there, Richard Branson's boat was there, Roger Daltrey's boat. You know, and these are the super yachts.
Sure,
Giant, you know, like, you don't ever expect to actually see one of those in person until you see a whole harbor full of them. You go, oh, this is, what is wrong with the planet? Or what is right with it? Depending on how you look at it. So
and what am I doing here? yeah.
This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So we're hanging out after the gig one night at the bar, and the crew, Townsend's boat, and I'm a huge English Premier League fan. So we're talking soccer and just shouting and yelling and carrying on and drinking, and they're digging because those guys love country music. We were playing more of our own stuff, which is kind of a fusion of things. But man, if we would hit, I mean, they were shouting out for George Jones and Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson. Because, you know, that's not an indigenous art form anywhere except here in America. And so they just thought we were the greatest things ever. And the second mate of the boat goes, all right, TJ, we're having fun now. It's time. We're going to take you to Wendy's. Yeah, Wendy's. I'm in the Dutch East Indies, and I'm going to go get a cheeseburger with drunk sailors. This could be fun. Come to find out that Wendy's is the second best whorehouse on the island. So here I am sitting at Wendy's, and the second mate, Pete, is telling me, all right, here's what you're going to do. We're telling everyone that you're Clapton's keyboardist.
Oh, God.
All you have to do is sit over here at the bar. Everything's on us. It's an open tab. Whole menu. Ladies, drinks, whatever you want.
Oh, wow.
Drugs. I mean, that's the kind of island where, you know, what kind of drug do you want? Somebody will have it for you. You know?
Oh, wow.
Whatever you want, but you're Clapton's keyboardist. Like, sure, man, no problem. Nobody even bothered to check them on that, because all I did was sit in a corner in some gig apparel and reasonably dark glasses and kind of enjoy myself and have a conversation or two with some of the nice ladies that work the place. And these guys macked that was their thing. Oi, look over there. It's Clapton's keyboardist. These were those. So I got to fake my way into rock stardom for a night in a whorehouse in Antigua.
Wow. You had to stay in character, though.
But there wasn't much character to play because nobody knew who I was supposed to be other than Clapton's keyboardist. And I could still be American.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be an Englishman.
Yeah.
He's Clapton's keyboardist. So it was that whole, someone who knows who Clapton, plays with Clapton, ooh.
That's funny.
It elevated their status in the room enough that they were able to play off of it. To enjoy it. And I was just, piece of meat. Well treated, but still. That's my good rock and roll story.
That's funny, man. That's funny. So we're wrapping up here. Tell them one more time, what is the your piano company thing?
Keys 44 Kids. Mm-hmm. You can go to the website keys44kids.org. Mm-hmm. They have all the information you need to hours. If you want to donate a piano, there's a form on there to fill out. We'd be happy to come get it. There's an offset fee to help pay for the move. Mm-hmm. Also nacebros.com. Nacebros.com. That's nacebros.com. Mm-hmm. Nacebros.com.
But you guys are a really good band. I can't remember. I've seen you guys once, but I can't remember where it was. But it was a really
We've been
good
known
show,
to play
man.
everywhere with that has some
and
electricity and part of a roof.
Right.
And everywhere in between.
Yeah, but a very, very, very good band in town. TJ Erhardt, thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming and talking a little bit,
It's
man.
been a pleasure.
I was enjoy playing with you, and I knew you'd be a good guy to talk to because you're like me. You like talking, and you like talking about music. And
Oddly enough,
usually people like that usually have some good stuff to say. So you did very well, sir.
At least if I faked my way through it, I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the show. KC Music Talk.
With your host, Rob Foster. Smoke break.
Well, yes, it is time for smoke break. But we'll see you guys later.
See you, everybody.